Hello, everyone. I think I'm live. I hope I'm live. Welcome to SPARC, Supporting Performing Arts in Rural and Remote Communities. This is the SPARC Members Network, and my name is Kim Blackwell, and I am the Managing Artistic Director at Fourth Line Theatre. And I'm so thrilled you're here to join us tonight, join me especially, to talk about a subject that's near and dear to my heart as the Artistic Director at Fourth Line, and that is mentoring emerging artists and arts administrators. So I'm going to probably talk for about 30 minutes, and then Rachel Marks from SPARC will hopefully have some questions for me. I'm a super on-time person. Maybe I should have waited a few more minutes till a few more people joined, but that's fine. All right, so I'm going to dive right in. It's interesting, when Rachel and I talked last month about what I might talk about in this expert chat, or this chat for SPARC members, when she mentioned the possibility of doing something about mentorship, she had me. She got me very excited, because mentorship is really at the heart of so much of what we do at Fourth Line Theatre. And so I want to take you through a bit about the meaning of mentorship, a bit about our theatre company for those of you who will be unfamiliar with us, a bit about me, and then we'll sort of dive into the way in which and the kinds of programs that Fourth Line has, and hopefully some of it will be useful to you to take away to your own practice, your own organizations. And I know this is such a crazy time for everyone. Yeah, I don't know. I think the words to describe this have run out. It's hard to imagine that. So anyways, I'm glad you're all here, and I look forward to spending the next 30 to 40 minutes with you. So I was looking for a good definition of mentoring, and I found a couple that I really like, so I thought I'd share those with you. The first one is: mentorship is a relationship in which a more experienced or more knowledgeable person helps to guide a less experienced or less knowledgeable person. The mentor, so that would be the more knowledgeable person, may be older or younger than the person being mentored, but he or she, they must have a certain area of expertise. It is in learning and development partnerships between someone with experience. So it is a learning and development partnership between someone with experience and someone who wants to learn. Interaction with an expert may also be necessary to gain proficiency with or in cultural tools. Mentorship experience and relationship structure affect the amount of psychosocial support, career guidance, role modeling, and communication that occurs in the mentoring relationship in which the protege and the mentors engage. So this is another one I really liked. Mentorship is a personal development relationship in which a more experienced or more knowledgeable person helps to guide a less experienced or less knowledgeable person. Mentoring is a process that always involves communication, and it is relationship based, and it is, but its precise definition is elusive. And I loved that description of it, because to me, that encapsulates it all. It's all about communication. It's all about relationships. And it's an elusive thing, and it can mean so many things to so many different people, depending. I was looking for the roots of the practice of mentorship, and there's a lot of writing out there that says that the actual roots of the practice have been lost, that they can't find the roots, but that the word itself was inspired by the character of Mentor in Homer's Odyssey, which is something I love. So I got really excited by that, and so I sort of delved into that. And I'm sure some of you know this, but there's a character in the Odyssey called Mentor, and he's very close to Odysseus. And so when Odysseus goes off, he leaves Mentor to look after his son, Telemachus. And so that's sort of where that mentoring idea comes from. But also Athena disguises herself later in the Odyssey as a mentor and gives encouragement and practical plans for dealing with personal dilemmas to Telemachus. And so the interesting thing about that word mentor from Homer is that it has now been adopted in Latin, many other languages, obviously including English, as a term meaning someone who imparts wisdom to or shares knowledge with a less experienced colleague. And I was also looking at the first recorded modern usage of the term mentor and the way that we think of it. And it can be traced to a 1699 book entitled Les Aventures de Télémaque, obviously the Adventures of Telemachus for us, by the French writer François Fenelon, which is Fenelon, like Fenelon Falls for those from our area. And the lead character in that book is entitled Mentor. So that was just a little bit of background. I wanted to, before we sort of dive into Fourth Line and mentorship, I wanted to tell you a bit about our theater for those of you who might not know us. I'll start with our mandate. So our mandate is to preserve and to promote our Canadian cultural heritage through the development and presentation of regionally based, environmentally staged historical dramas. So at the core of the theater, and this season would have been our 29th season, our 28th year, but our 29th season, at the core of everything that we do at Fourth Line is that mandate. Promote and preserve Canadian cultural heritage, the development and presentation of regionally based, environmentally staged historical plays. So for the past 28 years, we've been bringing history to life on the barnyard stages of a rustic fifth generation farm. We're just south of Millbrook. And we were founded in 1992 by creative director Rob Winslow. He's our founder. I'm going to take off my scarf. I was going to see how long I could go with the scarf, but I'm too hot already on this beautiful day. So the farm is actually has been in Rob's family since the 1850s. It's a 100-acre farm on the Fourth Line, which is now Zion Line. And we have been producing, we've done over 37 original plays over our 28 seasons. And we have been really capturing the stories of our community and the community around Millbrook, Peterborough, Lindsay, Port Hope, Coburg, that sort of general catchment area. And the other important part about the theater that I want you to know, which is really ties into mentorship, is that our plays take place not only outside in an epic way, using all 100 acres in some cases, or over the years, but large scale casts. So we have had casts as big as 83 at the theater. And so I'm going to delve a bit more into that, but it's really important to know that about Fourth Line is that our casts are large. And at the basis of our art practice at Fourth Line is a relationship between community-based work and professional theater. And that's going to become apparent and important why that's important to us and why we've been committed to that since the beginning. So in 2014, I took over from Robert as managing artistic director. He transitioned into the role of creative director. Remember that later too, around mentorship. And I have been instrumental in defining Fourth Line Theater's aesthetic and working tirelessly to give audiences the finest theatrical experience in the country. So that's us. I wish I could be there right now to show you how beautiful it is when you drive out of Millbrook, south on County Road 10, and then you come down the hill on Zion Line, which used to be the Fourth Line, hence the name of the theater, but now our road is called Zion Line. And you drive up the lane, and if you can picture it, it's sugar maples all the way up the lane. And on your left-hand side, when you're coming up, is a white farmhouse. That's where Rob lives, and his family has lived in that farmhouse for generations. I'm not sure if you can hear that loud car outside my house. And then you'll park in the parking field. And we have 3 barns that create a U shape, and we have seating for up to 450 people. In the summers, we would have a big white tent when you can arrive early and have a picnic. We have a production barn where all of our sets and props are made. It's a really stunning place to be, and I hope at some other point in time that you'll all be able to come and join us. Some of you who do already come to Fourth Line, come back and join us, and those of you who might get excited by our work tonight, come and see what we're all about. So I've been working at Fourth Line Theater since 1992, which is the beginning of the theater. And in terms of mentorship and mentoring artists, emerging artists and arts administrators, I'm probably the Fourth Line Theater poster child for this. I started out in 1992 as an assistant stage manager. I was acting in a tiny little role in the Calvin Blazers, which is our premiere play, and I sewed a lot of costumes. And over the 26 years I've been involved, so at 3 years off in between all of that, over the 26 seasons that I've been involved, I have done almost every job at Fourth Line Theater. I have been a marketing director. I have worked in the box office. I've worked in concession. I have been an associate artist. I've been the artistic producer. And then finally in 2014 became the artistic director. And when I talk about my life and my art practice, I have two types of people who have influenced me. I have mentors, and I have 5 specific mentors over the span of my almost 30-year career. And I have game changers. So I'll just give you a definition of what that means to me. The game changers are people who, for me, did something profoundly important in a moment and changed the trajectory of my life and career. And then I have mentors, and I won't go into who they are, but these are people who I have had over a period of years, very deep professional and or personal relationships that have changed how I think about my work, how I think about my life, how I think about the person that I am. And those mentors have made all the difference to me. I'll give you this example, or I'll explain to you. In 1995, I was living in the United States, living in New Orleans, and I came back to Canada in January of 1995 with $20 to my name. Broke, not a worldly possession. I think I had 1 suitcase. Between 1995 and now, the trajectory of my life, and especially my art practice, would not be possible without those 5 mentors and the profound, the relationship between us and the profound impact they had on me and the way they helped to guide and help me make the choices in my life. So there's that. So I want to talk a bit about our mentoring philosophy at Fourth Line Theatre, but I did want to start with just a little quote. I think it's from the American Society of Training and Development, and it says that a remarkable 75% of executives say mentoring has been critical to their career development. And so that makes total sense to me. I agree, and I've never shied away from asking for help and advice at important decision-making junctures in my life. Simply put, no matter where you are in your career, you don't need to go it alone. And I think mentoring is so well established in the business community that I think in the arts we have to catch up. And I know we've been doing lots of it in the arts, but I think we can do even more. And especially because succession planning is so important. And I don't know, especially in organizations, the councils, the arts councils ask you to articulate succession plans. And at Fourth Line Theatre, succession planning and our clear succession plan, I think, is one of the reasons we are so successful. And as a mentee or a protege, I've benefited from the deep experience of people who've made a personal investment in me. And as a mentor, I've accelerated other people's learnings and career growth just by investing time and insight, which has been incredibly gratifying. And furthermore, I want, when I take the time to mentor someone, my company, Fourth Line, and benefits immensely from that relationship. And what's really important to me about that is that I get as much out of the mentorship as the person being mentored. And also, I think it's important for proteges and people being mentored to know you will get as much out of the mentorship as you put into it. And that's so important. And what I want to talk about is that mentorship has been at the heart of Fourth Line Theatre and our work since the beginning of the theatre. And I started to think about the early days of the theatre in 1992 and 3 and 4 when there was a group of very established Peterborough-based theatre artists who started the theatre with Robert. And they brought a whole bunch of other people along, like me, who had been toiling in art practice in Peterborough primarily, but were very green or very junior or emerging, depending on the words you like. And we didn't even know we were having a mentor-protege relationship in those early days at Fourth Line, and yet we totally were. As the theaters emerged, we've gotten much more structured in our mentorship, where we acknowledge and actively mentor and have programs, and I'm going to talk about those. So that got me thinking about passive mentoring, the early days of Fourth Line, versus active mentoring. And just to help us understand those two types of mentorship, active mentoring, passive mentoring. As an active mentor, someone who is, an active mentor means someone who is consciously aware of their participation in the mentoring relationship. A passive mentor is one who is not consciously aware of their role in a mentoring relationship. This is when a protege or mentee, mentoree, listens and observes. The examples sort of passive mentoring can be just sitting in the rehearsal hall and watching, or sitting and watching someone do their art practice, and the mentor might not even be aware of their role as a mentor in someone's life experience. And I think that's so interesting. So I think a lot of passive mentoring happens that then moves into active mentoring. I want to talk sort of about a philosophy of mentorship at Fourth Line, and for myself. So as mentors at Fourth Line, we seek to make a contribution to the development of the whole person. So this requires some understanding of the current state of the person's intellectual and professional development, as well as their dreams for their future. Each person we mentor is different, and they have different goals that require different skills. But we will aspire to help them develop certain universal skills, like recognizing opportunities, asking questions, acknowledging shortcomings, and communicating effectively. And we'll encourage them to be good followers, but also to have the courage to lead when leadership is needed, regardless of their position in any power structure. And I think that's so important because of the elusive nature of being mentored. Sometimes it's hard, and I'm going to specifically in a bit talk about mentoring of directors. And it's sometimes hard inside rehearsals to say exactly what you're going to need the assistant director or the protege director to do. You'll lay out a few things for them, but what they want to really do is look at what opportunities they can find for themselves inside of that, because inside of rehearsals, for those of you who work in theater, it moves so fast. We have such short processes in Canada. So when you have an assistant director or a protege director or an apprentice director, it's really important for them to look for opportunities to jump in and to have their voice heard and to try and practice some of what they're observing and learning. So I wanted to talk about the ways and the types of positions we have and the ways that we mentor at Fourth Line. So we have a number of different ways in which we mentor people at the theater. We have apprenticeships, we have assistant directors, we have community actors, we have students working on papers at university and college level, as well as master's dissertations. So I'm going to delve into some of those. So at the heart of what we do, I talked about, is that professional community base and mix, which is unusual to any other theater company in this country that I know of. That is changing, but for a long time we were out in the desert doing this thing on our own. And what it means is that we bring together some of the top professional unionized actors in this country. They come to the theater to perform, typically in principal roles. And then we have community members, people willing to give of themselves. I think somewhere like 170 hours is required if you're a volunteer community actor working on a Fourth Line show. It's a massive commitment. And we put these professional actors together with our community actors, and they're not supernumeraries. So, they're not like, I think with Oedipus Rex I saw years ago at the Canadian Opera Company, the big pile of writhing bodies that was all, 100 and something supernumeraries. That's not what it is at Fourth Line Theater. Often, and most of the time, our community actors will be on stage with some of the top professional actors in the country, creating work together in multiple scenes, playing characters that have story arcs and character progression. So that relationship is profound. The ability especially for our young people in our community, to sort of learn at the feet of the masters. And that has been right from the beginning, like I talked about for myself. The other layer that we have, 2 layers I guess, is recent theater school grads. And we've given a number of the top Canadian theater artists their very first professional gig out of theater school. And so those people coming out of theater school with all of their education and book school knowledge have this chance to work in this professional setting with the Fourth Line Theater team, with professional artists on their very first professional acting gig. And that kind of mentorship is just invaluable. The other layer we have are semi-professional regional artists. And these are people of varying ages who probably have other jobs, but are for sure have an art practice in the Peterborough area, do a lot of semi-professional work in Peterborough, and in the summers come to us and work alongside the senior professional artists, the recent theater school grads, and our community artists. We also have apprentices. And so here's how it works with apprentices. We have apprentice stage managers. I talked about apprentice directors. We have apprentice front of house, sometimes apprentice actors as well. And apprentice actors is a really exciting position because quite often it's a young person who started out maybe as a child actor at the theater, and then as they get older, sort of late teens, near the end of high school, they will become apprentice actors. They'll get a larger honorarium. They'll work more closely with the professional actors. They'll have a bigger role. And a lot of those young people go on to theater schools and theater programs and conservatories. So we apprentice so much with our senior designers that come in, working with our technicians, and many of our technicians, our production assistants and our builders, our props people are in theater school. And so to work with those senior designers is an extraordinary mentorship, protege relationship. And what we've been really lucky over the years at Fourth Line Theatre until just recently is that there have been a couple of really good programs through Theatre Ontario. And unfortunately, with the latest round, or I guess a couple of years round of government cuts, these programs were eliminated. But they were the professional theatre training program. So you don't always, we've made a commitment at Fourth Line through our emerging women's directing program to pay emerging apprentice directors and assistant directors, but we couldn't always do that. And an amazing program that people who had an interest in learning to be directors could apply to PTTP, and actually it would pay their salary. The other program was our YTTP, which is also gone, which was the youth theater training program. And we used that many times for skills training. With our community actors, we spend so much time working with them, even pre-season. We put them together with the script. We put them together with directors and our musical director and choreographers and acting coaches. And they get a really intensive and free experience about just to up their game for when they get to the farm. One of the really amazing foundation programs as well that supported a lot of emerging arts administrators at Fourth Line Theatre was the Metcalf Foundation, and I know they still support emerging arts administrators but more their focus is more Toronto-based now. So I just want to talk about elements of a strong mentorship program. The first is to assess needs and set goals from the start. So it's really important for the mentor and the protege to get together because it's a relationship between two people at the heart of it. And when you get together, a mentor and a protege, you want to, as a mentor, explain your expectations. You want to hear what they're hoping to get out of it. You want to figure out what their goals for their career and personal development are. And that way you can start to take that elusive thing, the mentorship, and try to start to structure something that has goals attached to it, that is committed to building certain kinds of new strengths. Make your experience work to your benefit. So by this I mean recognizing that learning by doing is often an essential part of professional growth. Naturally, this results in setbacks that are important teachable moments. What I say is that I made a lot of mistakes, but this allowed me to shape my own vision of what my career could be and was a source of motivation to stay in the arts. So what I mean there is that whenever possible, we want our mentors really digging in and trying things. So as an apprentice or an assistant director at Fourth Line, you will be working with the community volunteers. You will be taking them off to the side or away from the rehearsal space in our barnyard and working with them on script work, on acting, on the physical body. You get to really practically try the things that you're seeing, say, the director do in rehearsals. So one size does not fit all is another really important point of mentorship. Find your fit. Go back to the fundamentals. At its essence, we talked about this mentoring as a professional relationship between two people. So there's just no way that one size fits all in mentoring or mentoring styles. So it's important for that communication between the mentor and the protege to say, this is who I am as a mentor, this is who I am as a protege, this is what I want, and to really advocate for what you want the mentorship to look like. And this is a really important one, and it's staying in it for the long haul. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but my mentors, my sort of 5 mentors, have been with me for years. And so it's really important to understand that mentorship ideally shouldn't stop after the training time is over, but ideally should continue as there are things we don't know and challenges at all of our career levels and as we progress through our art practice. Continued mentorship is particularly important for women, and this is where I'm going to start to talk pretty quickly here about Fourth Line Theatre's 2 programs for mentorship. So it's particularly important for women and other underrepresented groups in the arts to develop the context they need to reach leadership positions. So here's the thing at Fourth Line Theatre. What happens is that we are going along doing lots of plays. We've had assistant directors for years. Our plays, because they're history plays, have primarily focused a lot on men, because men have been written down a lot more than women as the makers of the important history. We know that's not necessarily true, and even at Fourth Line, there's lots of examples where we have found stories and plays and focused on women, for sure. We've done that a lot. But when I came into my position in 2014, and I started to look around this country and at the art practice at Fourth Line, it became really clear that I was going to have to really make a concerted effort and a focus to make sure that women were elevated to positions. So one of the things is we want to make sure we have, as much as we can, an equal number of men and women writing the plays at Fourth Line, doing our best. But one area where I knew that a lot of our plays would still continue to focus on men. But one area I knew had a lot of control was the directing at Fourth Line. And I made a commitment in 2014 that never again would a man direct at Fourth Line Theatre, except Rob Winslow, who's our founder, who always directs the first production of his own play, because men have had the ability to work in the epic milieu that is Fourth Line for a long, long time. And rarely do women with an interest in directing, or women directors, get the ability to work with those large size casts that we have, and they don't get to work in that massive epic milieu. Again, I just wish you could see our barnyard. You can start a scene from a half a kilometer away on a hill at the next farm and have a tiny little figure on a horse or on a wagon slowly come down the hill as the audience watches transfixed. So I made a commitment to training women directors and having opportunities for women to direct at Fourth Line. So that's our Epic Women's Directing Project. I'm going to talk about it in a second, but I wanted to first just say that our community-based work and our community volunteers, all of them fall under this amazing program called our Emerging Voices program. And that stands for, you don't need to know what it stands for. It's our Emerging Voices program. I've talked about it a lot. Our rural volunteers have played a major role, and I would argue the integral role in the success of Fourth Line Theatre's history since the beginning. From that very first play, the Calvin Blazers, right up until last year with Bloom, A Rock and Roll Fable, and Carmel. They are community actors. Not only capture the authentic voices in the plays, but have allowed the theater to create our epic productions for over 2 decades. So we took what used to be called our TEAM program, which was training, education, and mentorship, and we made our Emerging Voices program, which is volunteer. Voices stands for volunteer, outreach, innovation, community, education, and skills development. And it is one of my most favorite parts of the theater, because when we have our professional actors come to Fourth Line Theatre, and a lot of them are based in Toronto, what I know from what they talk about and anecdotally and how they are changed is as much from their experience working with the volunteers. And I can tell you a lot of them are always a bit concerned about that, coming and working on stage with volunteers in integral roles. But I have never had an actor, professional actor, come to Fourth Line and not be profoundly moved by the relationship between themselves and the volunteer actors. It's something that they just never forget. And it's a two-way street. The same with obviously the community actors, having that exposure to work with that level of professional artist. So then the other program that I touched on was our Epic Women's Directing Project. It's our newest project, and it focuses on giving Canadian female directors the opportunity to train and work in the company's unique community-based model. According to Equity in Theatre's website, in terms of artistic directors, and playwrights, women in Canada's professional theatre industry have not yet surpassed the 35% employment marker. So I'll just let that one just sink in a bit. We haven't even gotten to 35% in terms of artistic directors, and playwrights. And for those of us who work in theater, we know that 80% of the roles like the acting roles, have been written for men in the English canon, and 20% for women. And we know that 80% of the actors working in this country are women, vying for 20% of those roles. So one thing that I could certainly do, and I'm committed to doing, is trying to up the game and the support of women directors. And that's been incredibly exciting and gratifying at the theater. So over since 2017, when we formalized the program, so up over that 5 years, 2017 to 2022, maybe 2023, if this year doesn't happen, we've made it a priority to hire and train emerging and established women directors and give them the opportunity to direct in the outdoor epic large cast milieu that Fourth Line's created over our 28 seasons. They work primarily under myself as managing artistic director and Rob Winslow as our founder and creative director. And women directors at Fourth Line Theatre are given the chance to explore epic historical plays at our farm theatre space. Our project focuses on providing women directors that opportunity to work in that community-based model of ours. We're always recruiting women with varying levels of experience, ranging from people who have never directed before to women who are mid-career and seasoned directors. And each year we do a call for directors for that program. And it's been incredibly gratifying to watch the level of women who are coming out of that program and to see where it's taking their art practice. You know, when I think about my own relationship as a protege, what I think is really important for me to think about all the time, and my call to action around mentorship at Fourth Line Theatre through our Emerging Voices program and through our Epic Women's Directing Project, is that we as senior people have a responsibility in the arts community to pass our information and experience to other people, to junior people, to people who are emerging. And if there's a call to action tonight, it's to look into your community, and especially in rural areas, because it is so hard in rural areas to find mentor-protege relationships. And I would do a call to action to senior artists to think about how you can give back when things have settled down a bit. How can you give back, and how can you help mentor someone who is emerging? And I would also say that for emerging artists in rural areas, it's so important, if you can, to find a mentor. Find someone whose work you admire, who is doing something unique and fascinating, or something that is maybe similar to what you want to do, and approach them and try, start to establish that relationship with them. I think I've talked enough. I have all my stuff written down, so I'm going to go back. Now, I think Rachel will have questions there. I see that. So I also know that this is going to take, but Rachel, how are you going to give me the questions? This is the part maybe I didn't talk to you about. If you're listening, if you're writing, I'm going to take a drink of my Diet Coke while we figure this out. Thank you all for listening, by the way. Maybe I'll go to another Facebook window. Would it be there, do you think? Maybe it's on. See, we should have checked out. I should have checked on this. I thought I knew, and then I realized I don't know. And again, wait, I'm going to Facebook in another way. Sorry, everyone. I'm just going to see if there's anything there that tells me how this is going to happen. Nope, that will not be it. No, that's not it. Well, maybe. Rachel, will you tell me how it's all good? Oh, wait, I have to go down further. Oh my gosh, here. See, I am not a technological person. All right, amazing information, Kim. Thank you. I have a few questions that were emailed in earlier. First, how do you inspire high school students to want to pursue a career in arts administration? Well, that's a really good question. I think getting into the high schools is a really important way to do that. And we don't do a lot of that at Fourth Line in terms of arts administration. But I think one way for sure is through their art teachers, and also for artists to be in high schools. I'm thinking of someone like Spencer Harrison, the artist. I know he does residencies in high schools, and that's a real way for young people to have exposure to artists. And I think the same thing could be done with arts administrators. What is this? Did it just come through? Sorry, it should pop up. I do not see it. Did it just come through? Sorry, it should pop up. Oh, I see, you're just telling me that. I don't know if there's any more questions. The other thing you can do is you could send any questions you have to SPARC, and I would happily answer any questions separate from this, but here's another one. Okay, so the second question, for companies starting out, how would you engage the community? Well, you'd go out into the community. You would go to all those kind of community service events. So at the beginning of Fourth Line Theatre, one of the things we did was we had a very close relationship with the Millbrook Lions Club. In fact, for years they did a roast beef dinner before the show. But going to the local elementary schools and high schools and all the service clubs, for us it was a close relationship with the Millbrook Historical Society. There are so many service organizations in small towns and in small communities that if I was going to engage, that's how I would do it. We also do an interesting thing at Fourth Line. This is separate from mentorship, but in terms of working with community, we start a lot of our plays with something called a reminiscence. And that is, we have an idea for a topic of a play, so I'm trying to think of one that would be a good example right now. Well, here's one we just did before all of the world went crazy. We had two writers approach us about the idea of doing a play about the history of hockey in our area and in Canada. So it's an amazing play, perfect for us. So we kind of sent out a notice in our community that we wanted to gather people on a Sunday and bring them together at the old Millbrook School and talk about their memories of hockey in Millbrook and hockey stories. And I think like 45, 55 people came out. It was an amazing afternoon, I have to say, where the playwrights were able to hear really authentic stories. And also what was great about it was it gets our community excited years before a play might ever hit the stage about a play that's upcoming at Fourth Line Theatre. So our reminiscences, we call them sounding sometimes, but mostly we call them reminiscences. Our reminiscences have been an amazing way to connect with community and also to gather really authentic stories that have formed the basis of many of our plays. All right, well, thank you guys so much for having me. I think that was all the questions, and I think I'm gonna end the live video now. I assume I don't have to do anything else. I know it's being taped and it will be on SPARC's YouTube channel. I assume that's where it is. I'm literally making this up, but I assume that's what it is. And that was really fun, and it was fun for me, especially to spend some time just meditating on mentorship and our theater. And I was super thrilled with the ability and the time that, knowing I had this talk to do, it gave me to sort of really delve in and be meditative and thoughtful about mentorship at Fourth Line. So, so thank you all for listening and for joining me in my hot and sweaty house in Toronto. And I am moving to Peterborough in less than a month, strangely enough. But yeah, thank you all so much and have a great rest of your night.